What's up, guys? I'm Amber, this is Amber Online, and today for Spotlight on Comics we're going to be talking about Sex Criminals by Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky. Okay, so just first off, disclaimer, this is not a comic for kids. Use your judgment. It's called Sex Criminals. Not all comics are for kids. Don't give this to young readers. There's nudity and sex, obviously. But that being said, this is a fantastic comic for adults because it has some very, very well-developed characters, some very interesting scenarios, and a great examination of human nature and the world around us with a strange science fiction twist. So basically, if you're familiar with Fraction's work from something like Hawkeye, you know he has a great sense of humor. And Chip also has a great sense of humor in his art. He's great at drawing these like cheeky expressions on his characters and drawing people that look like real people, basically. So they're pretty, they're attractive, but it's not out of the realm of the possibility that you might see someone look like this. Like his primary male protagonist, John, when I looked at him, I was like, he's not designed to be beautiful, but he's a man that you could clearly tell would be attractive if you met him in real life. So the premise of the story starts out, we have the two main protagonists here, Susie and John, the face being kissed, and Susie's trying to save a library. It's going under, she works there, and they don't have funds for it anymore, the city's trying to tear it down, and John works at a job he hates. So the storytelling fashion in this comic is very non-linear, so if you enjoy sort of non-linear stories, I know, if you like non-linear things, this is one of them. But it's a non-linear story in that it jumps back and forth sort of from the sexual awakening of both of these characters in their early puberty to the end of the book comes fairly early when you see them pulling off this heist together to sort of this in-between part where they develop their relationship. The hook of this book, rather the sort of science fiction part of it, is that when these characters achieve orgasm, I say it right, it sounds classy, when they come, they stop time. And you can imagine the kind of trauma that might cause to a young person when they're like first discovering their sexual nature, and then this happens and they think maybe this is what happens to everyone, and then they gradually learn that it's not what happens to everyone. But when Susie and John find each other and they have sex together for the first time and they both end up in this time-stop world, they realize that it's something both of them can do. So obviously they explore the possibilities of what can be done with this power, and this is sort of where it's led to Sex Criminals, because Susie has a library she has to save and she needs money, and John is a little unbalanced a little bit. It's actually interesting the way they write John, because they give him he has ADHD and another attention deficit disorder. He's an issue with authority, and he's chosen not to medicate himself because of the way the medication makes him feel. And I think that's a very interesting choice for a protagonist, primarily because that's something that afflicts like a lot of people now, and it's not something that's widely discussed in literature yet, because mental illness and even social instabilities are still considered very taboo, and they're difficult to talk about, and I'm trying to, even right now, say it in a PC way so as not to be insulting. But it is something that's not really widely talked about, but it's something that's really widely spread, so I think it's nice that they incorporated this character and sort of gave him a primary role in his own story, if not a heroic role, because depending on how you choose to look at the characters of Susie and John, they could be considered not entirely good people, because when they discover they have this power, they become sex criminals. Not in the truest sense. They're not, hurting people. They're not violent. They're not evil, but they're trying to use this power as a means to their own end. And eventually they discover that they're not the only individuals with this power, and you get in some really unusual characters that are sort of like the sex police, as they call them. Now, this is a really cleverly written, really humorous book. The nonlinear nature of the storytelling can be a little disorienting at times, when you find exactly the situation you're in, but it only takes like a panel to reorient yourself, so it's not really a challenge to do so. It's just not a smooth story, and I think that's okay because it makes you think. And it feels very stream of consciousness, particularly because this is being told as a retrospective from Susie, and occasionally she introduces John and says, oh, let him tell this part of the story, it's his part of the story. So I think it's a great love story, a great relationship story, and a great story that discusses sort of the baser nature of human sexuality and how it's something that you know, affects all of us one way or the other, and something that shouldn't be a shameful or negative thing. And even at one point John says, because they're discussing their sexual past, obviously, since they both have this rather unusual ability, and he says to her that you haven't made me feel like perverse or dirty or anything because I did these things. And I think that might be part of the message that the creators are trying to convey, is that it's, the comic is tantalizing because of its sexual nature, that it's not a dirty or weird thing, and they're just normal people trying to do what people would do in these circumstances. The cast of characters surrounding John and Susie is fairly limited. The primary focus is on them, and I think that's good because it's the beginning of a love story, but you do have a few friends introduced from their lives, and obviously the sex police are introduced, and I think that these peripheral characters serve well to put conflict into the story in what is otherwise sort of a paradisical state for them, because they can freeze time. If you've ever seen that last episode of Futurama where Fry and Leela freeze time and just like walk through the world together, it's kind of neat. But overall, a really a good story. It's humorous, it's well written, the art is very, very nice. I'm sure I've shown you a lot of art by now. I've did a little video with the flipping through the pages. So very well done on art and story and storytelling. I'm looking forward to the next volume coming out. This one was just released in April, so it's still a fairly new release to trade paperback form. But it's something you should check out if you are looking for a comic outside of the superhero genre, but still like science fiction realism, if you're looking for something a little bit sexy, if you're looking for something humorous, give it a look. Sex Criminals. I'll talk to you next time. Bye. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Click the links on the side if you want to hear me talk about more comic books, and click any of the links here if you want to subscribe. I do appreciate it. I'm just going to sit here, give you the opportunity to click the link, because you're reaching for your mouse, and you're like, oh